Hello, and welcome back to the Boston Commune. This week's incredulous installment will feature commentary from Comrade Scott, Joe, Kit, Ellie, and myself. Joe gives us an electoral rundown as more down-ballot races wrap up. I cover a culture of conflicted cognition, Ellie conveys that which can't be contrived, and Scott tells us what content to consume. There's even talk of taxis, trains, telephones, and Talib. So please do us a favor and share this content. Do yourself a favor and enjoy your Epoch.
Sorry, I'm amping myself up right now by yelling that boy's thick at myself, so just to get it going.
That is a thick-ass boy.
It's a thick-ass boy!
Emu boy!
Joe, how we doing?
The question is, where do we want to start?
I was literally leaving that to you to decide. So
You can roll some dice if you want.
Roll the
Random number
dice.
generator.
Roll the dice.
We could start with the trade deal. Whether or not it will actually happen now is in question between the U.S. and the U.K. due to the election of Joe Biden. Back in mid-September, the British Foreign Secretary came to Washington to attempt to appease congressional Democrats on Brexit because the United Kingdom, as it's still 3 years later, almost 4 years in March, is attempting to leave the European Union. And it's not as clear-cut as simply them leaving because they still have a land border with a European Union member state, the Republic of Ireland, via Northern Ireland. Since actually 2017 is not actually just exclusive to the Boris Johnson government, Theresa May's government from 2017 to 2019 was also pushing for a hard border with Northern Ireland, as well as just kind of muscling its way through the European Union. And the European Union has been of the position since 2018 that a hard border with Northern Ireland is a non-starter, and they're supporting Ireland's objection to this because what the UK wants to do is basically crash out of the EU on its own terms and potentially undermine the Good Friday Agreement between Ireland and Northern Ireland by instituting a hard border, which, besides the fact that it would cripple the Irish economy because everything would be forced to go through customs checks that haven't had to deal with that in decades, it also would potentially reignite the troubles that had plagued Northern Ireland for several decades and which were finally ironed out in the late 90s with the Good Friday Agreement that established a peace process between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and with Northern Ireland actually getting a little bit of autonomy back from the UK. This is relevant because the British government is still trying to do this, and they were correctly terrified that a Biden administration would actually make this situation a bit more difficult, given that they will now be between the United States and Iraq and the European Union, taking fire from all sides. So in mid-September, Dominic Raab, the foreign secretary, tried to go to Congress and get some goodwill out of that. However, it didn't really work out for him because Biden tweeted in mid-September that a trade deal is completely off the table and a non-starter if the UK tries to undermine the peace process there. And Nancy Pelosi also threatened that if they undermine the peace process in Ireland, that a trade deal will never get through Congress as long as she's speaker. And I wouldn't say that's an idle threat given the fact that any trade deal requires 2/3 support from Congress. So there's also the Congressional Friends of Ireland caucus, which would make getting a trade deal between the US and UK with a hard border impossible because the Congressional Friends of Ireland caucus, which was founded in 1981, is a bipartisan caucus of Irish American politicians with the goal of promoting peace in Northern Ireland. They have about 40 members in the current Congress. Notable members of the caucus include Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts. He represents the Worcester area and is the chairman of the Rules Committee. Current caucus chair is Massachusetts Representative Richard Neal. Joe Kennedy III, he's on his way out the door, but he's still currently a member of the caucus. Representative Bill Keating, he represents the Cape. Chuck Schumer and Tim Kaine in the Senate are also members of the caucus. So, honestly, any chance of a trade deal is probably out the window if the British fuck around and find out.
Fuck around, find out.
There's that phrase again.
Yes, that classic Lenin adage.
It was October of 1921 when Lenin famously was quoted saying, "Fuck around and find out."
Fafo.
According to Open Secrets, this is the most expensive election cycle in modern American history. At a cost of $14 billion was spent this cycle. For perspective, the entire 2016 campaign cycle only cost $6.5 billion.
We're number one.
It got a little bit harder to brainwash us. Like, the price just went up.
Literally, a grand total of $6.6 billion was spent on the presidential race, and about a little over $7.25 billion was spent on congressional this cycle. Democrats and outside groups aligned with them spent $5.5 billion if you aren't counting the $1.4 billion spent from Mike Bloomberg and Tom Steyer, the two billionaire presidential candidates. The GOP, for their part, spent $3.8 billion. And part of why the Democrats did so poorly is because the man that was hired to run the DCCC's Political Action Committee this cycle was none other than Hillary Clinton 2016 campaign manager Ravi Mook, which moves on to the next topic of discussion in the current events is the down-ballot just car wreck of a result for Democrats. There was the infamous Wednesday conference call the day after the election, which Representative Abby Spanberger, conservative shitlib, and also, comically enough, ex-CIA, said, and I quote, "We need to talk about what we are for. We need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again," end quote.
Was this a conference call with all like the newly elected Democrats?
This was just like a conference call of like current members that happened the day after the election, because Spanberger's race was so close that she actually her re-election wasn't called until Sunday. She made these comments on Wednesday, but
I like a confident woman.
she was like talking about how like her experience in the CIA like made it like really easy for her to figure out that like we shouldn't be doing this. So the Democrats spent like $6 billion, and yet all they've gotten for this in return is they barely clawed ahead in the presidential race. They barely won that by the edge of a razor blade. They've only gained one seat in the Senate. North Carolina's Senate race was actually called this afternoon for the Republican incumbents. There's two runoff elections in Georgia. They're probably not going to win.
Georgia?
Because the libs will have gone back to brunch by then. And the Democrats in the House have so far, as of about 8 p.m., they have suffered a net loss of 5 seats. They entered this election with 232 seats in a majority of 17. They've already lost 5, a net loss of 5 because they picked up 3 seats in the North Carolina 2nd, 6th, and the Georgia 7th. But they have lost 8 incumbents so far. The California 48th was called this afternoon. They lost in the Florida 26th and the 27th, which are both in the Miami area. Colin Peterson of the Minnesota 7th, which honestly, it was frankly a surprise that he survived last cycle, given that Trump carried his district with 62% of the vote 4 years ago. The Democrats lost in the New Mexico 2nd at Nebraska. They lost the Iowa 1st, the Oklahoma 5th, and the South Carolina 1st. So far, the Democrats are down to a net loss of 5. However, they're currently trailing in 7 races in which the California 21st, TJ Cox, the incumbent, is trailing by 4,041 votes with about 91% of the estimated vote in as of around 7:45 p.m. tonight. The California 39th, which they're still counting and nobody's called it, but I'm personally ready to call the race for the Republican challenger, small businesswoman Young Kim. I'm ready to call that for the Republican, even though nobody else has yet, because I've looked at the county level data and he's toast. I guess he can't win the lottery more than once in life. In the Utah 4th, Mormon country, incumbent Ben McAdams is trailing by 1,722 votes with an estimated 2% left to count. In the New York 3rd, Tom Suozzi is trailing by 4,100 votes, like 28% of the vote left to count. And I think the California 21st, Utah 4th, and New York 3rd, Democrat could ultimately pull out a victory by like the skin of their fingernails. But they're also trailing in the New York 11th and the New York 22nd by pretty large margins. And also the Iowa 2nd Congressional District, which is an open seat the Democrats are defending. The Democratic candidate is currently trailing by only 48 votes, with about 2% left to count. And the worst case scenario is right now that the Democrats could suffer net loss of another 7 incumbents, which would bring them to a net loss of 12. And that would bring them down to 220 seats. And House Democrats would have a majority of only 2, which is essentially not a lead at all.
Yeah, that does sound as bad as you were saying. When you say it's only 2, sounds not great.
Democrats started the 116th Congress in January 2019 with 235 seats. That's a majority of 17 seats. They've already lost a net loss of 5. So best case scenario, Democrats only end up with 227 seats, which is a majority of 9. Worst case scenario is they only end up with 220 seats, which is a majority of 2. I think, however, that most likely they will end up suffering a net loss of 7, which will leave them at about 225 seats and a 7-seat majority. I also like to make a correction from the Patreon episode in which I said that Representative Lauren Underwood had lost a race in the Illinois 14th Congressional District at the time. She was trailing with 49.8% of the vote, 90% of the vote in. However, Underwood is now leading as of early this evening. She's now leading by 1,089 votes, which is 50.1% of the vote and about 2% of the vote left to count it. So we discuss in the Patreon episode the 2 QAnon candidates who won, Lauren Boebert in the Colorado 3rd and Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Georgia 14th. There were 2 QAnon candidates who ran for Congress in Massachusetts, but if you want to find out more about those 2, you got to listen to the Patreon.
You got to find out about Boebert. You got to find out about her. Fascinating person. Wonderful picture on their Wikipedia.
So there were some not so great ballot result outcomes and some more positive outcomes on the not so
Joe,
great
can I ask
side.
you a question real quick before you get into this? You really don't think the runoffs in Georgia will see like a good turnout?
I mean, it's honestly impossible to tell, given the fact it's like earlier than mid-November now. It's really kind of impossible to tell. His historical pattern in like the last 20 years is when there's like a runoff at a statewide election in Georgia, the Democrats always do terribly because the libs go home and turn out craters. And like 2000, the most recent example of this would be 2008 when incumbent Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss was forced into a runoff, and Chambliss got like 47% of the vote in the first round. But when it went to a runoff that was slated to happen in late December, he ended up getting like 64% of the vote because Democratic turnout cratered because the libs went home in that race. But at the same time, however, in 2008, that runoff race could have just like been the tipping point to decide who controls the chamber because the Democrats already had a massive Senate majority because they had 2 wave elections in a row in the Senate. Whereas this is a whole other ballgame where like the control of the Senate is going to be decided by these 2 races. So it's honestly impossible to tell if the historical pattern, the trend will be held up and turnout will crater and the Democrats will get crushed, or if because of the urgency and the like actual relevance and importance of these races will turnout actually increase or at the very least maintain like their current levels, which even at current levels is probably not going to be helpful for Democrats. They probably need an increase in turnout, even though this election last Tuesday was already an increase in turnout from prior levels. They're probably going to need an increase of turnout, which was an increase of already an increase of turnout. That makes sense.
Okay. I didn't know the history of that. That's very discouraging and weird. Liberals are weird. Maybe ranked choice voting wouldn't have worked in this state after all. Anyways, you can carry on, Joe.
Speaking of which, ranked choice voting did not just fail in Massachusetts. Of all the states that don't already have it, the state that probably desperately needed it the most, it also failed. And actually, it failed by a slightly greater margin than it did here. Because in Massachusetts, ranked choice voting, question 2, got only 45.1% of the vote. In Alaska, ranked choice voting got only 43.5%, which is really depressing and weird considering the fact that Alaska is probably the only other state in the country, besides Maine, that needs ranked choice voting as desperately as it does. Because Lisa Murkowski hasn't been elected with a majority of the vote, for example, since like 2004 when she first ran for the Senate.
Was she a write-in? Am I
was-
following that correctly? Okay. God damn it.
She was one of the only people to ever successfully win as a write-in candidate in a general election, because she lost her primary in 2010 to a Tea Party candidate and the party left her for dead. And so she figured out how to get a plurality of Alaskans to be able to correctly spell the name Murkowski on a ballot as a write-in candidate and was able to win the general election, which is impressive. Like,
I think you said the exact same
Yeah, he did.
sentence.
It's still impressive. It's still impressive. And I think if you can get if you have a fucked up last name, if you have a hard to spell last name, and you can get that many people to learn it, maybe you deserve your spot.
Yeah, speaking of someone with a really fucked up last name, which I'm not going to share here, I'd say that's very true. And I've never been able to, I can't get people to spell it. I can't get people to pronounce it. I feel you, Lisa.
She was actually reelected in 2016 with 44% of the vote. And hilariously, being Alaska, the candidate came in second with 29% of the vote and was the Libertarian Party candidate. The candidate came in third with 21%, was a independent, and then the Democratic candidate was at like 14%. So this is a state that doesn't really do like majority results at the statewide level. You would think they would actually be receptive to ranked choice voting, but here we are. They failed to get that across the line.
How many people live in Alaska, like in total?
I want to say it's on the order of somewhere between, off the top of my head, it's probably somewhere between like 500,000 and like 700,000, or between
it's
500,000 and 900,000.
Never mind.
We'll just let the vampires take them. It's fine. 30 Days of Night reference. Never mind. Keep going, Joe.
Boo.
It's a good movie.
I just thought it was a generic vampire reference, which is fine.
In equally bad news, actually, this is actually a lot worse. Prop 22 passed in California with 58.4% of the vote, which essentially codifies the serfdom of ride-hail and delivery drivers. Because under Prop 22, drivers for Uber, Lyft, Instacart, and others will be classified as independent contractors and denied the benefits derived from being classified as employees, such as labor protections, wage laws, reimbursement for work expenses, benefits, among others. The really astounding thing is how much money was dumped into this ballot campaign, because Uber and Lyft dumped in a combined $200 million into this one ballot question.
You know what immediately this makes me think of? Joe Jorgensen.
How so?
And why is that?
You mean Yo Jorgensen?
Because in California, you're not treated like an employee. You don't get any fucking benefits. But at the end of the day, you can go smoke weed about it.
Not to be punny here, but this law is paving the way for the gig economy to be the only form of employment in the future. Just so you know, you're going to lose all your rights. We're going to have no capability to form any sort of union structure. So thank you, California.
Really fucked up though. It's like real Pinkerton kind of shit. Is that during like the campaign cycle, like the last several months, anytime an Uber driver or a Lyft driver wanted to like start picking up another person, they'd have to click yes on 22 anytime they start a new fare.
Yeah, or if you were a passenger and it said like, oh, like good call for your, a little pop up would say like, oh, will you vote yes on Prop 2 or whatever? And it was like it either said yes or cancel. So, like, you had to say yes to call for your ride.
It's like an Adobe update.
Jesus. My parents were definitely parroting the counter arguments. Like, well, some drivers say they like the flexible schedule. They like being able to pick their own hours.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that really, that's actually really like very analogous to the 19th century argument of like the happy slave. Well, some of the slaves like it, so it's okay that we own them.
They're grateful that they have somewhere to live.
A few years ago, I got a ride back from the emergency room at like 3 a.m, and my driver just seemed like he didn't give a shit about anything. And to make friendly conversation, I asked him if he liked his job, and he said yes and no. He liked it because it was flexible and he could work his own hours, and no, it sucks because he's responsible for everything, all the costs, all the repairs. So I mean, it's not a new phenomenon.
Like,
it's
the
just
insurance, the lease, everything.
Yeah, like it's not a new phenomenon per se. It's just that Uber is skimming so fucking much off the top, and Lyft and all that, and like they were designed to lose money.
Their business model is exploiting the shit out of their drivers.
It's neo-serfdom, yeah.
But it's worse than that, because like the only reason that these ride-sharing monopolies exist is because they are backed by huge investors that know that it will never be a profitable business, but they can keep going back to the banks for money time and time again because it's such a large corporation that they muscled everybody else out of the way, to the point where they're now literally writing their own legislation.
Prop 22 is actually, the reason they put it on the ballot in the first place was to override, like Assembly Bill AB5, which actually legally classified Uber drivers as employees. And so this is why this ballot question became a thing in the first place, to override the legislative branch of a state. They were unhappy with the policy decisions made by the elected representatives of that state government. What's really fucked up about like the serfdom of this is that there was a report that came out about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, that the average Uber driver after expenses is only making $3.75 an hour, which is just like 50% of the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. So the average Uber driver is actually making half of the federal minimum wage after expenses.
And at the same time, there's like stories about how the CEO of Uber just bought, a tens of millions of dollars mansion.
Yup.
They're bad, folks. And like I said on the Patreon, all of this is the backdrop of the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's a very important political film that you should all watch.
That's true. It very much is.
I'm kind of like half serious.
No, I mean it's more relevant for, well, no, I guess there's like lots of levels. My friend Ron wrote his his senior thesis when he was an undergrad about the like racial undertones of it.
Yes, all the cartoons are secretly, they can't actually, like, cartoons can't actually patronize the tune taverns and shit. It's fucked up. That movie is deep. I love it. Who Framed Roger? Yes, it's problematic as fuck in the modern era, but it is saying something very true about not only Hollywood and that era of Hollywood, but how capitalist interest is destroying the public sphere, is destroying that communal space that we all have. It's Judge Doom is a cartoon form of capitalist. That's why he's evil, and that's why he kills his own kind. It's very deep moving. Move on, Joe.
Actually wanted to go back for a sec to when Joe was talking about the Prop 22 or whatever being an answer to an assembly bill. This is something I've been thinking about recently, and I had never thought about it until recently, which is that the sort of question format, the proposition format, the whole existence of that is such a weird double-edged sword, because sometimes it's great, as a tool to get something done that you couldn't get the legislature to do. And sometimes that's a win for the people. And if I had more time, I could probably think of some examples of that. But at the same time, sometimes it's an opportunity for Uber to go like, no, we want you to continue being serfs, and we don't care what the assembly said, so we're going to brainwash everyone into voting yes on this.
I think it just provides a more obvious place where people are buying people's minds. And we know that this happens in general elections. It's just not as focused on a particular industry. So you don't tend to see the same types of all-in crazy propaganda about one particular thing when it's less industry related. Like the amount of money that went into trying to defeat safe patient limits for nurses in Massachusetts is like in the $15 million mark, which is insane and way more than any activist group could ever hope to rival. But you wouldn't have seen that for any particular race in the state house. Maybe there's a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there by the same industries, or hospitals give that. It's just not as obvious as when it happens on a ballot measure, and not as focused.
Well, I think it also speaks to the fact that it's much more of a threat to the ruling class when we make any attempts to change the way that democracy functions versus when we try and switch the driver of the Titanic.
Moving on to this is the last depressing ballot question before we get to the positive ones. 62% of Louisiana voters voted in favor of a ballot measure to amend their state constitution to note that nothing in the Louisiana state constitution protects the right to an abortion or requires the funding of abortions, which is basically adjacent to we're outright banning all abortions.
Yeah, some pretty tricky language there.
Say that again.
Louisiana voters voted to amend the state constitution to note that there's nothing in the Constitution to protect the right to an abortion or requires the funding of abortions.
So it would basically make it that their hands are tied if they can't provide aid to an abortion clinic or something like that, And
it's codified that you have no guaranteed right to an abortion.
It's fucked up. See, that's how they're going to kill abortion in this country. Not through the Supreme Court, but through the small courts and through the state constitutions and stuff like that.
I think this could be the thing that I think it actually could go through the Supreme Court. It eventually ends up with the smaller states, but it starts off with something like this, because this will almost certainly trigger a legal challenge that will get sent up the federal court system before it reaches the Supreme Court, and then these supermajority conservative Supreme Supreme Court will get rid of Roe v. Wade, and then that will mean that it's like up to each individual state to determine whether or not each state recognizes the legality or the constitutionality of abortions. And then each individual state will decide, and then as Scott said, it will most likely become like most states will be like, no, we don't allow abortions in this state.
Yeah, and they'll put it under the guise of like, well, this is for best for the state's economy. Like, they're not going to overtly say that it's like a religious or conservatively driven thing. They'll say that it's they're thinking of the budget, they're thinking of like the economy, they're thinking of how can we fund the schools if we have to fund like Planned Parenthood. Like, that's the language that they'll use.
Plausible deniability.
I honestly assume, giving these like the people who are pushing this are like the true believers and like this in that like ideology are probably just going to do the same thing the segregationists did in the 40s and 50s and just be screeching states' rights.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah,
I'm skeptical that it has anything to do with actual religious beliefs. Like, I tend to always look at it from a standpoint of some way or another amassing capital or just chipping away at the rights to like any public services. Because every time they do that, they set a precedent to get rid of something else.
This is probably not about the religion. I think that they like try to justify it by like trying to wrap it in the rhetoric of religion, but it's really about the ideology of chipping away at like individual rights or certain public services.
I think it's libertarianism couched in religious freedom.
Like wrapped in the rhetoric of religion.
It's too bad Trent's not here this week because he's from Louisiana, if I recall correctly, and could probably speak to this.
But moving on to the
just going to dox Trent a little bit.
Significantly less depressing ballot measure. The real winner of last week's election was drugs, because weed legalization.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah!
Bring back that psychedelic consciousness, motherfuckers.
The only fucking thing that was a bright spot. I'm left out. It hurts.
Weed legalization passed in Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, and South Dakota. Actually, in South Dakota, they passed both weed legalization and medical marijuana at the same time, which is interesting. And in Oregon, a ballot measure to legalize magic mushrooms passed with 55% of the vote. And in a separate ballot question in Oregon that passed with 58% of the vote, it will not only set up a drug addiction treatment and recovery program that will be partially funded through the state's marijuana tax revenue, but it will also decriminalize Schedule 1 through 4 substances such as cocaine, heroin, and meth. So, coming to a theater near you, you could do meth in Oregon.
Wait, meth? Wow.
I wish I had like Austin Powers music to play right now, but oh well.
My first thought when I heard that this passed was like what a street brawl would look like between like Black Bloc and the Proud Boys if everybody was fucking tripping mushrooms.
It wouldn't happen. Everybody would be like, whoa, bro.
But they'd be like,
we're all part of a larger system.
My experience.
We're all connected. Look at the water. It flows.
It's beautiful.
But it's flowing from
Where are
me.
the aliens? Where are the aliens?
The king ordered it!
Yeah, where's Bob? What does Bob think about this?
Bob thinks it's great.
Okay.
Yes, very great, Bob.
Yes, it's excellent, Bob. So basically, the state of Oregon is basically moving towards like a Portugal system in terms of its posture towards drugs, which is basically everything goes.
Do they have supervised injection sites in Portugal?
Yes, they do.
That's how you do it.
I mean, as someone who works in that treatment field, I think that's the direction that we're going to need to go.
The most progressive position on drugs for a couple decades now. And it certainly doesn't hurt that currently they are probably the most radical government of any country in Western Europe right now, as they have been governed by a coalition government between the Portuguese Communist Party and the Portuguese Socialist Party since 2015.
Neat. I didn't know what I was going to say there.
Wow, that's just swell.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a... how well is that government functioning? I have so many questions.
I'd like to see some video of the Portuguese parliament. How crazy is it?
They actually just got reelected last year.
Love to see it.
To another 4-year term.
You love it.
When you were going over all the stats for different elections, I really wanted to bust in with like a, good afternoon, San. This is John from San Antonio.
Moving to foreign policy, the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan is finally over, like for real this time. As the Monday afternoon, the Armenian Prime Minister, the President of Azerbaijan, and Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a 3-way peace deal that basically amounts to an Armenian surrender. The deal comes on the heels of a significant strategic advance by the Azerbaijani military, and the Armenian Prime Minister called the deal, quote, painful but necessary. The peace deal requires an immediate withdrawal of Karabakh and Armenian troops from all Azerbaijani territory not explicitly in Nagorno-Karabakh itself. The terms of the agreement also call for the immediate deployment of a 2,000 troop-strong Russian peacekeeping force to monitor the region and also ensure the protection of the ethnic Armenians who live in the disputed area. And in the course of the 6-week war, thousands were killed and over 100,000 people were displaced from their homes.
So if you're a liberal, you can go back to not knowing where those countries are on the map, basically.
Yeah, I think it was hilarious. It's probably a theory at the libs. This is an example of Russia actually bringing peace.
Yeah, that's another interesting fold to the story.
Because the United States was like nowhere to be found during this entire 6-week war. The State Department was basically like, well, we'll let them figure it out. They can figure it out themselves, despite the fact that they're actively trying to kill each other right now.
Can I read a news story that's both local and pertinent to the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict?
Yes.
All right, so again, I got this story through the Universal Hub. This is from a Watertown news source. November 1st, 5:18 p.m. A pair of people, a man and woman, who were distributing flyers about the conflict in Armenia, called police after a man pointed a pistol at the man when he left a flyer at a home on Merrill Road. The leafletter went up to the door of the home, and when he went to put the flyer inside the screen door, he saw a man at a window inside the home pointing a gun at him. The leafletter showed the man the flyer and tried to tell him what he was doing. As he explained, the resident got extremely angry and kept pointing the gun at him. The leafletter turned around and quickly walked away. Officers went to the home after the incident was reported and spoke to the homeowner. As they approached the door, the man had a gun in his hand. The resident cooperated with police and secured the gun. The man said he was scared because he thought someone was breaking in. Officers confirmed the firearm was loaded and said that the man was properly licensed to possess the weapon. Police determined that they had probable cause that the resident had committed an assault with dangerous weapon for pointing the gun at the leafletter. Police investigated the man's home and found 8 other weapons that were not properly stored in the home. They were not secured with a trigger lock or in a safe and were left out in the house. The 48-year-old man was summoned to Waltham District Court on 6 counts of improper storage of firearm and 2 counts of improper storage of a high-capacity firearm. All the firearms and ammunition was seized by police, and the man's firearm license to carry was suspended. The man received the Massachusetts Class A large-capacity firearms license in June 2019. It had a restriction for hunting and target practice. There had been no prior complaints about the man. So for some reason, people who were just nicely trying to distribute leaflets around, this was finally the thing that set this motherfucker over the edge.
Some wild shit.
Yeah, apparently it doesn't take much. Like you point your gun at somebody, bam, you're gonna get the man is gonna descend upon you and slap you with many violations of your firearm storage, etc.
It's also a little bit ridiculous that he pointed a gun at someone and is being charged with improper storage of a firearm.
Yep.
Like assault, right? I forget. I think even just pointing a gun can be classified as
Someone
assault.
should be a little bit more of a harsher than a slap on the wrist for improperly storing said guns. That's just me.
It's assault, not battery, because it's a threat.
Exactly. That's different in different states, but yeah.
What happens if you accidentally fire it at someone that you're pointing it at?
Second-degree murder. They're not going to know that it's accidental. Sorry.
Or battery. Also, if you hit someone with your gun, I think that's battery too.
Wouldn't that also be assault with a deadly weapon?
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
I forget. The laws are very complex.
No, it's not a deadly weapon if you just pistol whip somebody.
Smack them across the face.
We can only
I
hope
was
it's
more
not
going
allowed.
for that this can give people PTSD as a freaky and terrifying thing, and they're going for some other random mundane charge.
Yup.
Yesterday, the United Nations Council on Human Rights had its annual meeting to review the United States' review on human records. On top of the fact that it's actually just genuinely an interesting thing to take in, other countries having their take on how the U.S. record on human rights is, it also completely just drives the PragerU types up the fucking wall, which is a hilarious thing unto itself. Because the PragerU types they're still very butthurt about the fact that Cuba and the Maduro regime's representatives from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela are still sitting on the Human Rights Council.
I know. It just warms the little tank in my heart.
It also warms my heart that Somalia is on the council, considering the fact that we've been bombing them for the better part of a decade now. Well, not the bombing part, but the part where they have a position to be able to call out the U.S. for their war crimes.
Really, what happened was the U.S. rage quit the Human Rights Council. So
They did. Actually, Germany called them out for that because there was like 8 pages worth of advanced questions that were prepared in advance of the hearing, which I am looking at, and it's honestly awesome. Like the Republic of Iran, like actually has like 3 whole pages of like actually very well reasoned questions and complaints directed at the United States, and I'm going to go through some of them. Sweden, for example, had a lot of concerns about, quote, Sweden notes the increase in hate crimes based on sexual orientation or gender identity, and that many states lack reference to sexual orientation and gender identity in their laws. How does the United States of America intend to ensure that LGBT plus persons' full enjoyment and human rights are able to be granted under the law without discrimination? Also, from Sweden, there are worrying reports about the treatment of migrants at the southern border, in particular the practice of separating children from their parents, as well as keeping children in detention at length and under conditions that imply a conflict with, for example, Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. What concrete steps will the United States take to ensure the rights and safety of all children? That's actually some of the more milder questions. We have, where is it? This is a question prepared by the Iranian delegation. Given the inhumane, illegitimate, illegal, and indiscriminate nature of unilateral coercive measures that result in gross, widespread, and systematic violation of human rights of the targeted populations, in particular during the pandemic, and being aware of numerous calls by international authoritative bodies to terminate unilateral sanctions, will the United States commit to ceasing its unlawful practices of imposing unilateral sanctions against other countries? How will the United States compensate for the loss of human life, as well as the material damages incurred as a result of its unilateral coercive measures against the targeted states and their populations? Will the United States commit to holding those responsible for devising and implementing unilateral sanctions accountable? Will the United States commit to addressing the request of the special reporter on negative impacts of the unilateral coercive measures on the enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms for American cooperation on assessing and evaluating the negative effects of their actions on targeted states, including women, children, and vulnerable people? And then you have China, which is, their questions really get to the core of American imperialism, because they have a couple questions about the CIA. Quote, has the United States adopted any measure to address arbitrary detention, torture, ill treatment, and other human rights violations committed by the CIA and other intelligence agencies overseas? Has those responsible for perpetrating or order such violations been held accountable? And will the United States close its secret detention facilities established in other countries? Quote, will the United States end mass surveillance around the world and stop undermining the security of other countries and freedom of expression, the right to privacy, as well as human rights of other people? Quote, does the United States plan to end military intervention in other countries and stop killing their civilians wantonly? What measures has the United States taken to hold those accountable for killing civilians in order to prevent impunity? Those are just some of the questions that were prepared in advance at this meeting, which ran about 3 hours.
that ties nicely into just what I'm going to touch on in Rabid Radlibs. So that's nice. I like that. It might be whataboutism. You could call it whataboutism, but
response to the critique
I support it
from like the right, because I've been thinking about this for the past day and a half, because I watched about an hour of the hearing on the UN's website, and I will gladly provide the links for the prepared questions as well as the feed for the 3-hour hearing that we can put in the show notes if you want.
What about the MBTA?
I don't know how that's on my mind.
I think everybody needs a little bit of venting time for the MBTA first, and then
I honestly haven't been pissed about something since like Super Tuesday in March, and this is like my take, but like this is me like after like basically being like in a blind rage for like all of yesterday. So this is me like chilled out, which is what in the fuck. Also, I know I said in the Discord earlier that it's almost like they're trying to, but I'm honestly of the position that they are actively trying to destroy the T.
Can you give the details?
In the early 2000s, at the end of the Big Dig, for some reason they dumped like $5 billion of like debt bonds from the Big Dig energy. They dumped that onto the MBTA. Ew. So basically, what we're seeing is we're watching like in real time what happened to the post office 15 years ago is now happening in real time to the MBTA, which is they create a manufactured crisis, they withhold funding, and then when the agency in question begins to have money troubles, conservative forces and acting on behalf of capital go, look, the agency's having money problems, time for service cuts. And we're now seeing that in real time. And so they're cutting all commuter rail service on the weekend. They're getting rid of that entirely. In fact, they're making a 35% service cut to the commuter rail in general overall.
And it would stop at 9 p.m.
Wait a second. So there will be no commuter rail trains on the weekend?
No. Which, as someone who lives outside the city,
like, that's like an absurd cut.
Someone who lives outside the city, I'm like in a blind rage about that because, like, okay, so if you live outside Boston, how in the fuck are you getting into the city?
What if you work on the fucking weekend?
Not only that, but they're shutting some of the stations down. Like, they're shutting one of the commuter rail stations down in my hometown under the justification that, oh, there's not as much service there. How the fuck can you get away with shutting down Melrose Cedar Park?
Carlene just texted me and said that's when they do the cheap fares, too. So, yeah, it's how they get away with minimizing the amount of actual community benefits that they had extended.
Yeah, as someone who grew up in a place where there is no commuter rail and minimum trains at all, we may very well be headed toward a world which is like the one I grew up in, which is where if you can't drive there, you don't go there.
Wait a second, I think the T is seriously on track to fuck me over twice this month. I didn't share about this on the podcast before, but I guess I could kind of go on a rant now. So because those machines where you like reload your card, they're so fucking janky, there was a period of time where I couldn't find a convenience store where I could load money on my card unless I had to pay cash in order to do so. It was always like a struggle for me to get to an ATM, withdraw cash so that I could put it on my Charlie card. So on days that I knew I would be going past machines where I could reload my card, I would try and carve out some extra time so that I could ride around and find one that actually fucking worked in order to make that transaction. So what I decided to do was set up recurring payment. Somebody hacked my account attached to my debit card, so I had to get a new debit card. When I went back to the MBTA site to set up recurring payment again, it was down, and I kept getting 504 errors. So I decided to buy my monthly pass in cash at the 7-Eleven. I tried the MBTA site again, and it was finally fucking up. So when I went to set up recurring payment, I found out I had to purchase the pass online in order to set up recurring payment for the future. So I did that. When I called to get a refund, because I had 2 monthly passes, they said, oh, well, that's not our problem because that's a user error. So they just decided to keep that money. I also purchased a fucking commuter rail ticket, and I don't think I'm going to get refunded for that either.
Probably not. It's actually deeper than just the commuter rail. The ferry service is will be going on indefinite hiatus. So they're just getting rid of the ferry service altogether.
Troll-looking fucking horrible-looking beasts.
It's the MBTA.
They're also cutting bus and subway service. They're going to stop running the bus and the subways after midnight.
I'm getting pissed now.
Which is an hour before they usually stop running. Like, that has saved my ass. The Orange Line being open until like 1 in the morning or like 12:30 has saved my ass on a variety of occasions.
Yeah, on those shifts that I work in Charlestown, when they fuck up and the person who's supposed to get there for the night shift doesn't get there on time, I'm not going to be able to get home on the T anymore. So I'm basically just going to have to give up whatever wages I make to pay for a fucking Uber, which we already went over. God damn it.
Not only are they shutting down the subway an hour early, but they're going to be lowering the frequency of the trains that are actually coming in and out. Subway's frequency will actually drop 20%, which means that there's probably going to be an extra minute or two added on to like the amount of time between two arrivals. Bus and subway service are shutting down an hour early, and the most frequent bus lines would actually see availability reduced by 5%. And those are the bus routes that aren't actually getting cut, like service cuts, are actually seeing an average availability drop by 5%. A bunch of bus routes that have lower ridership or nearby transit options are being consolidated, shortened, and 25 bus routes are actually being cut altogether, including some in Dedham, Beverly, and my hometown of Melrose, which there are no words to describe like the sheer amount of anger I have towards this. The trolleys on the Green Line's E branch are going to be ending at Brighton Circle instead of continuing to Heath Street. All ferry service between downtown Boston and Hingham, Hull, and Charleston are stopping altogether as soon as March. And I'm sorry, I just can't get over the fact that they're getting rid of the commuter rail on the weekends. I just can't get over this. They're actually shutting down 6 commuter rail stops altogether. They're shutting down one, Melrose Cedar Park in my hometown. They're shutting down Plymouth Station, Plimptonville Station, which is in Walpole. They're shutting down Brighton Crossing in Beverly. And they're shutting down the Silver Hill and Hastings Station in West. This is like an extreme amount of austerity.
Yeah, this makes me just as angry as it makes you.
So they're cutting 30% of subway service. They're cutting 15% of the bus service. They're cutting 30% 35% of the commuter rail service, and they're just getting rid of the ferry.
And the cover story is that they're getting less fares because of the pandemic, right? I think that
Actually, that's not even the excuse they're using. That's not even.
Oh, it's not. They're not mentioning it at all.
No, it is, but it's more of a secondary argument. They're arguing, oh, we've had money problems for a while. As I already mentioned, they're laboring under a manufactured crisis up to the tune of $5 billion. If you get rid of the, I don't even know why in the fuck that the MBTA ended up with the big dick bonds, because the fact that the MBTA had nothing to do with that project. And yet they're handed $5 billion in debt that they have to service. They can't get anything done because they have to service $5 billion of debt. And as a result of this, in the last 15 years, the MBTA has racked up $7 billion worth of backlog in basic upkeep and repairs and maintenance because of the fact that they have to spend so much of their operating revenue on this debt servicing.
It's also a note that the Big Dig serves generally white, much more wealthy city commuters coming in from suburbs, whereas the MBTA is serving a much more diverse and generally much less loaded population. So this was like the opposite of progressive taxation.
You know what it says on the MBTA site right now? At the very top of the page, it says, service change. MBTA levels have been increased in the interest of the health and safety of our riders and employees.
For now, but the Globe reported yesterday that these service cuts are coming either in the early spring or next summer.
It's like they're trying to bury it under the fucking rug.
Not only that, but I noticed this last week because I was surprised with this. But when I came to Oak Grove to come to the protest on Wednesday, I noticed they actually dropped the fares by 50 cents. They dropped fares like 50 cents each way to make it seem like they're getting people are getting like a discount, when in reality they're like trying to lull people into not noticing that they're cutting everything.
Yeah, I only brought up the pandemic because I was going to say, like, if it turns out that a vaccine becomes available and they're still in the shitter, that excuse is going to evaporate instantaneously.
But that's neither excuse they're coming up with is even any good, because like they've racked up $7 billion in upkeep backlogs and maintenance because they have to do this debt servicing. But they shouldn't have had this debt in the first place. And also, I really, really, really just all of this does is makes me really, really, really want to punch Mike Dukakis in the face, because he is the asshole who began the process of neoliberalizing the MBTA. And Charlie Baker is merely the culmination of decades of these kind of policies. Sure, Baker's been trying to kill the MBTA since he got into office 6 years ago, or 5 years ago. But it started with Mike Dukakis, which is also annoying because everyone thinks of him as, he rode the T a lot, so you must like the T, right? No, he's the one who started privatizing it.
Their announcement on this doesn't make any fucking sense either, because they're claiming that these service changes to match new ridership patterns, they're being implemented to match the change in ridership flow in accordance with the COVID-19
exactly
commuter
that makes even
patterns.
less sense.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
But they're not going to go into effect until fucking next year.
That is the most convoluted dog shit answer I have heard on any stupid excuse in some time. The Trump administration has better excuses about why they can't be bothered to do anything on COVID, for fuck's sake.
That's true. That's a sad
Later,
truth.
they're saying this is going to change. The bus schedule would change later in the summer in 2021. What the fuck? They're just projecting COVID-19 ridership stats into the fucking future now?
This really, significantly amplifies the importance of Michelle Wu's race for mayor of Boston, if anything.
I love the language here. Approximately 10 routes will be consolidated or restructured.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, gotta use that business language.
We're only kind of getting rid of all commuter rail service after 9 p.m. This is 3 hours sooner than it is already. Currently, the commuter rail, the last train out of North Station to Melrose Highlands on the Haver Line, leaves at about 12:10 in the morning. The last train to Lowell out of North Station leaves at 12:15 in the morning. That's 3 or 4 trains. So if you didn't make the 9:20 train, I guess you're fucked. But we're also just going to get rid of it altogether on the weekend. Great. But we're just guessing because we think there might be some COVID, like maybe next August, say.
Here it's saying that the 93 route is a highly redundant bus service and can support diverted ferry riders. How the fuck does that work?
This bus route is really helpful for all the people we're about to fuck over that can't use the ferry service anymore.
Diverted, quote unquote, those who have been fucked.
It just literally doesn't make any sense. I have clients that will all need to take the 93 and the ferry. You can't just take the 93 instead.
Honestly,
Jesus Christ.
Kind of makes coming to and from meetings in the future kind of almost impossible for me.
I'm gonna refrain from saying anything I regret, but
Can we just call Charlie Baker now?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Any ideas on how to fight this? Besides calling Charlie Baker, any ideas on how to fight this?
Yeah, what do we got?
Because Mike Connolly is trying to present like a amendment, I think, to the state constitution about like taxing billionaires more or taxing the rich in the state more.
38 people voted for that. 127 voted no on that.
Worst fucking state. Well, I mean,
we live in like one of those dog shit states in terms of transparency, or the fact that our representatives, despite the fact it's an 80% Democratic controlled legislature, can't be bothered to do anything useful.
There is a little bit of hope in some like city level government just trying to get free public transport through the city paying the MBTA, which could solve all of the funding cut from the state problems. That said, funding cut from the state is still a large portion of this. Everything being in Boston means that the Michelle Wu race is going to be the most important, and it's really, really hard to undo a...
He fucking disabled his voicemail. Holy shit.
Oh my god.
Are you calling him right now?
Yeah.
I called him. He's
yellow!
His voicemail's fucked.
You fucking coward, Charlie Baker. Fucking coward.
Our business hours are Monday through Friday.
I'm calling his fucking Boston office. I don't give a shit.
If this is an emergency, please hang up and call 911. For the latest updates on COVID-19, please visit mass.gov.
For you, Baker, there is a little bit more hope in
You
cities
can also call
other than
211.
Genuinely hope Baker
State.
gets
Health
COVID.
concerns, call
Right,
your
I said
doctor,
it.
local board of health, or the Department of Public Health. For small business loan applications,
What did you say, Joe?
empowering.
I genuinely hope Charlie Baker gets COVID. I said it.
Visit mass.gov and use the search bar for the following.
You'll get a bunch
You'll
of
get so
doctors.
many
You'll be
people
fine.
infected. Who is doing his hair? He's never stopped having his hair done.
Concerns about daycare facilities.
That is such a long voicemail message. Jesus.
Cosmetology salons, the Department of Public Health. For evictions and tenant concerns, type Attorney General Guide to Landlord and Tenant Rights.
Holy
For
shit.
school
This
closures,
is re-
type the Department
He's,
Really?
he's trying to pillar you into just giving up.
And if you did not hear the answer you were looking for, please call back during weekday hours.
Oh
between
my
9 a.m.
god!
and 5 p.m.
Just pick one. That's like 5 or
This is
something.
a fucking scumbag.
Look, if you're a politician, you should be, ready for criticism and people calling you at all hours to tell you that you fucking suck. All right? God damn it, it comes with the job.
I did not foresee the complete rejection
Coward.
of all voicemails on his DC line. So
Fucking coward.
I'm a little bit flummoxed here. I don't really know how I'm going to follow this up.
Wait, why does Baker have a DC line? Why is he in DC?
Good question. I mean,
Yeah.
he is being
Not a
floated as like a...
senator.
Yeah, he's probably with Biden. He's meeting with the Biden people.
He's
He
had
actually
it.
is. His name...
That's the line that I've had to call because, like, it usually his Boston line is fucking inaccessible, and it apparently still is.
being floated as like a name for a possible Biden cabinet.
Right. I was
Secretary of Transportation.
Secretary of being a dipshit who gets his hair done all the time.
apparently he said he
Yeah,
didn't
getting your hair done all the time is not bad. Calm down.
Okay, like this
I
is
love
like
that.
right beginning of COVID that he clearly had his hair like recently cut, and he definitely had that was true in March, that was true in April, and that was true in May, and there weren't hair salons open those times. So he was like sneaking around his own damn rules to get his hair cut.
He
somehow.
probably has. He must have his own guy.
God.
He must got a private barber. Lucky man.
It's still illegal.
Come on, Charlie Baker. Like, even I have a more low maintenance masculine hairstyle than you do. Like, why not adopt the full shave? For the times. It's a pandemic. It's the end of the world. Fucking shave your head. It's fine. You'll look like a badass.
Why do you think he got rid of the DC voicemail?
Too many calls. Too many people telling him he sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been doing this for a couple weeks where we call him just to harass
It's
him.
just us. It was only us. We caused this.
The power of the pod.
For legal reasons, I will preface this by saying this is for parody, but can we go to, the Swampscott and, Molotov cocktail his house during the afternoon hours?
Yes.
Not parody.
Yes.
There's several marches to his house. Also marches to DeLeo's house. Most of those are for particular bills and particular why did you cut this in other setups. But, you can just go march or pick it outside his house. That's totally legal.
Yeah, as long as you don't go on the property, right?
I don't feel there needs to be a reason. We could just scream outside of his house because he's an asshole.
Yeah, but if you say that it's about the MBTA, you may get people to pay more attention to you than it's just saying, hey, there's a jerk who lives here. Because, I live in the street with jerks who keep driving into the shared street sign hat things.
Well, it can be about both of those things, really.
Many layers.
He's an asshole, but it's also in a deeper layer because of the MBTA. Or the other way around, whichever one you want to pick.
I think being an asshole is just the deepest layer of someone's identity.
There's just that, and then there's just overtones of him being an asshole.
He likes money. He's a greedy man.
To work as a healthcare venture capitalist, you have got to be rotten to the core.
I mean, what they do is evil.
There's an industry that's people get sick, so this industry exists in this country. How can I extract wealth from that?
You know what I might do? I might call the Executive Office for Administration and Finance and see.
Call Joe Biden. Tell Joe Biden to skip Baker. Be like, no.
Tell Baker to fuck off.
Jack, this guy's an asshole.
Hey, Jack, you just so you know, you kick him back up the mast and have him actually run that state. Shouldn't be in your cabinet.
Tell me you don't like his haircut.
Come on, man.
He does have kind of a
You've reached
stupid
the
haircut.
Executive Office for Administration and Finance, located within the State House. If you know the extension of the staff member you'd like to reach, you may enter it at any time. Or to use our names directory, please press 1. To leave a message in our general mailbox, press 0 or remain on the line. Thank you, phone.
Executive Office for Administration and Finance, general mailbox. Record your message after the tone. When you've finished, you can hang up or press 1 for more options.
You're all fucking scumbags. Quit. Bye.
Amazing. Yeah. Short to the point, totally like it is.
Biden needs to go up to Baker and just say,
Will you shut up, man?
Listen,
my apologies.
Well,
Jesse, how are the Radlibs this week?
I thought we were going to transition from the UN hearing into what he was talking about, which was supposed to dovetail with that.
oh yeah, that was just, whatever. Cue intro music. Yeah. So, I tried to stay out of the discourse on specifically Biden and Harris stuff. As in, I didn't critique their records or anything. How I'm on the Facebook front lines, so that's what I'm referring to here. And Carlina's making a lot of noise doing stuff. So,
Essential worker on the discourse front in the trenches.
I mean, I've seen several posts along this vein, but I'm definitely not going to call this person out because it's not really about them specifically. But one of my friends who happens to be a trans woman in recovery posted, quote, "And everyone woke up the next day like, oh yeah, everything still sucks." And I think that encapsulates the very short-lived victory that liberals experienced over this election process. Because to be honest, I really don't think fucking anything is going to change for the better or for the worse. I heard a WBUR segment. It was released November 9th called "For Boston Activists, Harris's Election Sparks Joy, Tempered by Determination." And an excerpt from that I just typed out. "When it comes to criminal justice, Harris has billed herself as a progressive, but her critics say during her years as a California prosecutor, she did things that were not so progressive, like advocating for higher cash bail, or resisting calls to investigate certain police shootings, or opposing a statewide police body camera mandate." And then they ended the segment with,
"But the elevation of a black woman to the second highest office in the land,
That's progress.
And my brief analysis of that is that these are reflections of cognitive dissonance. Some awareness that attitudes are shifting, but material conditions are static, if not degrading. Liberal punditry normalizes the politics of compromise, implying that wherever we are is the point of stasis between progress in one arena and regression in another. In a sense, this is true in that it reflects a dialectic, but merely a dialectic of opposing forces within the upper echelons of society. It is a continuation of the narrative established during the Obama administration, one which teaches us that change is symbolic, that change occurs when the person at the podium looks different from their predecessor. It is also true in the sense that cultural attitudes precede political movements. But in this instance, our political movements, mass mobilization of workers, students, immigrants, and even a sprinkle of revolutionaries, are being stymied by candidates which represent nothing but cultural attitudes. And so last week I covered Biden's congressional record, so I just wanted to briefly mention a few bills which earned a yes from Kamala Harris and a no from our lovable cuck, Bernie Sanders. The Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, pick your year, and the USA Freedom Reauthorization Act, which has a whole bunch of other legislation coupled in there.
That is one big pile of shit.
And that was what I was saying, pertaining to foreign policy.
Freedom Act is the new name for the Patriot Act.
Well, it's the Patriot Act, but there's also a whole lot of other shit that gets extended. It's like reauthorizing basically mass surveillance, the ability of...
Yeah, I was about to say it probably has more like gives the government more power to restrict or at least monitor like internet activity.
It's basically like the crime bill, but without any like redeeming things that are like wrapped into the overall like legislative package. Like the crime bill had like the assault weapons ban and the Violence Against Women Act, but like the USA Freedom Act, it is all bad, all of it.
It is like Team America World Police, but with zero irony.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the most depressing piece of legislation ever.
And that's where I will end Rabid Radlibs.
You know, I actually want to debate a little bit on the point that whether or not things will actually get worse. Because I'm actually inclined to say that things actually probably will get worse, given that the House Democratic majority is probably going to be whittled down to like just barely enough to cobble together a majority. On top of the fact that we have a Republican Senate and a right-wing Democrat president. The last time we had a right-wing Democrat president in a Republican Congress, which, let's be real, if worst-case scenario and the House does end up being true, there are enough blue dog Democrats left in Congress. Blue dog Democrats are like right-wing Democrats. They are essentially Republicans who are like the most conservative people possible who are willing to put a D next to their name. There are enough of them left that it essentially effectively gives Republicans control of the House. The last time we had a right-wing Democratic president in a right-wing Congress, that was Bill Clinton. And we literally had an...
What? I would say that was Obama, but okay.
With Obama, he had actually controlled Congress for the first 2 years, but like,
Hillary.
we literally had an episode about how badly that went.
Lock her up.
Again.
There's also the like ticking time bomb of we live on Mother Earth, who is boiling or burning or generally having a generalized immune response against humanity. And we haven't seen any commitment to like fix that. So not doing enough is going to make the problem worse.
I don't think anything is going to happen, and no offense to our older listeners, but this is the result of the fact that we live in a gerontocratic oligarchy that masquerades as a constitutional republic. Because here's the thing about the incoming government. The president will be 78 years old. It is the oldest president we've ever had. The vice president will be 56. But the Senate Majority Leader will be 79 years old come February. The Senate Majority Whip is 75 years old. The Senate Minority Leader is 70. The Senate Minority Whip is 75 years old. The House Speaker will be 81 years old come March. The House Majority Leader is already 80. The House Majority Whip is also 80. So, youngest party leaders in our government currently right now are the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California and Steve Scalise of Louisiana, who is the House Minority Whip. They're both 55 years old. And Kamala Harris, who is the Vice President. Those three people are the only party leaders in our government come January who are under the age of 60.
Heard
so
it
the
here,
problem
folks.
is those people have absolutely no incentive to do anything on climate change because they will be dead long before the chickens come home to roost on the issue of climate change.
No, you're forgetting about adrenochrome, Joe. They could outlive us. We don't know.
Okay, like they do have interest in the sense that like they have children and grandchildren. It's just they have a greater interest in the money that they make to not care about climate change.
They have an addiction to the money. They don't actually have an interest in it. They're just addicted.
Yeah.
The thing is that those grandchildren will most likely be bequeathed all of that inheritance, which they will be able to use to insulate themselves from the consequences of climate change.
Exactly.
So
there you go. That's why they're not doing anything.
I think the best analogy to this would be kind of like the U.S. before the banning of the Atlantic Slave Trade Act in 1808, because it's like, oh, well, like the people at the top of government in the United States were like, okay, well, we're old, and we would like to be able to continue profiting off of the backs of other human beings. So can you just like let us like continue to rake in the profits, and then you guys can get rid of this like after we're dead, after we're out of the picture. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
I just want to give Kit a second to sign off.
But yes, this is Kit, they, them. I am not found on the internet because it tends to give me problematic brainworms. See y'all.
Have a good night, Kit. Thank you.
We love Kit. We love him, folks. We love him.
We love him.
We love him.
See them.
Joe, I think it's great that you apologized to our older listeners. Our oldest listeners probably like Scott or something.
Probably my mom.
Yeah, okay.
No,
yeah, I guess
we have.
my parents have heard this.
If you look at the demographics, there's
like
like.
before you get on an entire age demographic, it's the polite thing to do.
You heard it here, folks. First, folks. Joe hates old people. Okay.
He hates them, folks.
He sees old people and he thinks, why can't we tap into their adrenochrome? Not the other way around.
Yeah, that's what he's thinking. May not be saying it, but that's what's going on in the old noggin.
So we're all thinking here.
It's Bubba
Or
Hotep.
the young noggin, I should say.
I just don't think 80-year-olds should be like completely in charge of our governing decisions.
Ellie, do you have some shit that you shouldn't make up or wouldn't make up? And Joe, you're right. The olds shouldn't be running our government. We need to have a more representative government, which means more young people should be in the government. Everyone, I think, should be able to agree on that. And if you don't, then what the fuck?
There was actually a segment that I left out of Rabid Radlibs. I feel like sometimes I can harp on the notion of like a proletarian dictatorship a little bit too much, because people who don't really read into what that means, I feel like it kind of turns people off from the notion of socialism.
People just hear dictatorship.
Yeah, I've gotten in those arguments before, and it's fucking weird.
But
I know a number of people that hear the word dictatorship, but they just go into
precisely,
kind of go into their shell.
Yeah, they don't get the oxymoron aspect.
Right. So like what I was going to say, I might as
do.
well just say it because it's still true, is like we're dealing with the antithesis of a proletarian dictatorship. It's because we aren't represented by any demographic. Like we are governed by people who are much older, much whiter, and much richer than we are.
We are not represented. This is not a representative society at all. Like the concept that we are a democracy, which is of the people. We are not. The median wage in this country is like $61,000. The average net worth of the average House member is $900,000. The average net worth of the average senator is $3 million. The Speaker of the House's net worth is $115 million. She has $46.5 million in real estate assets. So there's absolutely no fucking chance in hell that as long as she's in Congress, which is probably as long as she's alive, let's be real, she's never giving up her seat unless she dies, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we're never going to see any kind of national rent control happen.
Money.
Woo! Wait, unless who gives up their seat?
Pelosi.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
She has $46.5 million in real estate. That's
Good morning.
Sunday morning.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
an FDR would go against class interest to that degree.
FDR was a whole different story, but I don't.
We're not going to get into
also
that.
About FDR. A lot of people on the internet left have been saying that they're hoping that Biden could be the next FDR. Look at Biden's cabinet.
Biden can't be the next FDR because there's no Communist Party.
Yeah, exactly. There's no outside pressure. And the entirety of his cabinet are people from like Uber and like Lyft and shit like that. You know, it's CEOs.
Did you see the Political article about like the people who are like most likely to become it? And it's like, oh, 2 of the top 3 people in the running for Treasury Secretary are from the finance industry.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, oh, well, there's this one woman. She's from like she's like one of the Federal Reserve chairs, and like, well, progressives are angry that she has ties to Wall Street. Then there's the other 2, and because the Congressional Black Caucus, which they do not speak for the interest of all black people, they're the most like reactionary politics because of how wealthy they are. So, well, the Black Caucus would like some more black people to run the Treasury Department, and so they're the 2 choices that they are really pushing for is the head of like an investment firm and the head of the president and CEO of TIAA CREF. Those are the 2 choices the Black Caucus wants to head up the Treasury Department. Great! It's basically a lateral move from the Obama administration jamming up all the finance-related cabinet positions with people from Citibank and Goldman Sachs. But hey, they look black, so I guess it's okay. Finance
it really is like a flip-flop, because we had a black president with the white as fuck VP, and now we got a white as fuck president with
she's like black.
I don't want to harp. I don't want to harp on this too much, but yeah, she's
for all who want it.
Black.
It's also insane that Pete Buttigieg is apparently the frontrunner for multiple cabinet positions. According to this Political article, he is frontrunner for Secretary of Defense, the Education Department. He is frontrunner for the VA and the United Nations ambassador position, despite the fact he has, as the article admits, he has no experience with that whatsoever.
I can at least like understand what they're talking about when you say Secretary of Defense, but like the others, like the fuck are you? What?
So great, the VA is going to just be ruined because it would be like the VA for all who want it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the VA is the only healthcare system in the entire country that is actually like a fully integrated, single payer, like socialized healthcare. The VA is like the only instance in this country, and you want to let Pete Buttigieg run rampant over that for 4 years? Like, really? Concussion? Well, there's a market incentive for you to go work for McKinsey, and that will solve your problems.
We need some Buttigieg sound drops. We haven't done the Mayor Pete voice in a while.
I hate him with a burning
strikes for those who want them.
I don't know how much I want a Pete Buttigieg sound drop, but you know.
My
Do the high hopes dance.
Actually,
our sound drop will just be high hopes for 10 hours.
I do that song and I just like burst into laughter now. I don't even need any context, just a thought.
I'm really mad because I liked that song.
Especially considering that that dude, the Panic at the Disco dude, like is like a fucking asshole.
Is he?
Like, yeah, he's like a creep, like abuser dude, and he's just like he's fired everybody else in the band and shit. You know, he's a shitty dude. He's a pretty shitty dude.
You just listen to his lyrics, you can tell he's kind of
gotta have high for a living.
Well, that explains why he likes
Panic
Pete
at
so
the
much.
Disco.
Yes, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
They totally went like just straight up like pop music. They stopped directly ripping off Fall Out Boy.
Yup.
No, you're wrong, because have you heard New Fall Out Boy? It's indistinguishable
It's like infuriating Pete people.
from that Panic at the Disco song.
I stopped listening to Fall Out Boy after that album.
I thought I did too, but when Dunkin' Donuts still played Dunkin' Radio in the lobby, there was a song that I found out down the line was a Fall Out Boy song, and it sounds exactly
CVS.
fucking like that.
CVS is what caused me to accidentally be listening to Fall Out Boy.
This is why I always have my earbuds in whenever I go into a convenience store, so I don't
Smart move.
accidentally hear music that will infect me
Any unauthorized
and ruin me. But it's important to remember. It's always going to be important to remember that this ain't a scene; it's a goddamn arms race.
Our space.
Do you have a thing that you can't make up?
Yeah.
You can make this shit up with Comrade.
Yes, I have just a quick light one this week, which I think I actually heard about a long time ago and forgot, but I saw it again recently, and that is the Waffle House Index, which I will...
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
What is that?
I am fascinated by the Waffle House, so...
The Waffle House Index is an informal metric named after the Waffle House restaurant chain, and it is used by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to determine the effect of a storm and and the likely scale of assistance required for disaster recovery. Because apparently Waffle House has a reputation for having good disaster preparedness and staying open during extreme weather, or reopening quickly afterwards. The main guy that they mention and who coined this term was a FEMA administrator named, it's probably Craig like Fugate or something, but I read his last name as Fugate, and he coined this term in May 2011 after the Joplin tornado in Joplin, Missouri, during which the 2 Waffle Houses in Joplin, Missouri remained open. Apparently, Waffle House assembles and trains, quote, Waffle House jump teams to facilitate fast reopening after disasters. They do most of their business in the southern U.S., where there's a frequent risk of hurricanes and tornadoes and other shit. Apparently, because they're prepared, and the fact that a cut-down menu is prepared for times when there is no power or limited supplies, the Waffle House Index rarely reaches red, which they have green, yellow, and red. Red is the restaurant is closed, indicating severe damage, severe flooding, or a pandemic. From a critical capitalist, or a perspective that is critical of capitalism, obviously this is kind of depressing. Because if you work at Waffle House, that means you might end up having to go back to work, even if there's just been a fucking tornado. But the strange and weird aspect of it, I guess, is just that this is a thing that FEMA actually uses. As far as I can tell, they actually use it to figure out like how likely something is that they need to go in there and help out. And that's about it. I'm Ellie, and I still can't remember the name of my segment.
This is the future libertarians want.
Yeah.
Waffle House fallout shelters.
By the way, the Universal Hub website has a French toast alert level.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's another reason I love that website.
What's that about?
1 slice, low, no storm predicted. Harvey Leonard sighs and looks dour on the evening news. I can't even get through the rest of them. But yeah, it's a similar rating scale.
That's great.
Actually, I can five slices, severe, nor'easter predicted. This is it, people, the big one. Harvey Leonard makes repeated references to the blizzard of 78. Rush to emergency supermarket now for multiple gallons of milk, cartons of eggs, and loaves of bread. Ignore cries of little old lady you've just trampled in mad rush to get the last gallon of milk. Place pets in basement for use as emergency food supply if needed.
Look, Krampus is going to have to take someone. It's going to be the little old ladies. We got a 5 French toast storm out here, everyone. 5 slices.
Shout out to Adam G.
We love him.
We love him, folks.
We love him. All right,
It's
I was
funny.
gonna.
Whenever I send him like a picture of some shit that's happening, it's like a roving Universal Hub photographer or roving Universal Hub reporter or something. But I'm eating a cookie.
Potential cabinet picks, but there is actually one person they suggested that they might consider for cabinet position that I don't hate with a passion, and that was Sarah Nelson for Labor Secretary.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that.
I know that that would be really, really awesome, but at the same time, it's that's never fucking happening.
They wouldn't offer it to someone that legitimate. Yeah,
they're never gonna let someone that awesome near an actual position of power. But that would be awesome. I mean, a guy can dream about a better future that will never happen.
That's something they call too good to be true. And then there's the opposite of that, which is too true to be good, which is what we're going to get. And I have a question, just a little, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this because, we should wrap up soon, but I just wanted to get, test and this can lead to a little short conversation of, just how are we feeling post-Saturday and the announcement that it is, most likely going to be Biden, and our reaction to, for example, people going out on the street and dancing and all that shit. And how did you feel about all that? Because I felt very strange about it. I felt very kind of alienated by it. It was
incredibly grumpy. That's how I felt.
I felt like I was quietly sitting in the shadows being have your fun, have your I particularly I do Bollywood dance, and I have some of my classmates are on my Instagram or whatever, and they're all being woo, they're all libs, and they're all woo, come on, Kamala, blah blah blah, and I just don't want to take it away from them, I've been really grumbled, sitting quietly to myself, being I'm just not gonna post any shit about Kamala. I'm just gonna gonna let you have your moment, because it's not like it's not like their feelings are invalid, like it's
an extreme
meaningful
amount of restraint on my part.
Yeah, I mean, like I can't, like, for me to be like, to jump in there and be like, hello, did you know that she sucks? But the thing is that I can't, if I were to do that, I am still a white person doing that, and she does
It comes
suck.
across a certain way, yeah.
But they can find that out in good time, I guess.
I just let out all of my grumpiness and frustration on every person I interacted with in person that weekend. But then again, they were all Republicans, so it's kind of a semantic issue almost. Because all of the people I had to deal with that weekend, it really sucked for me because I had to deal with all of my coworkers are Republicans. They're all Trump supporter and whatnot. And the election results were called about 3 hours before I had to come into work on Saturday. So I get to work and they're all bitching about it. And for some reason, all of my coworkers are still of the belief that the election isn't, quote, really over. And I was like, do you know how
you
to do
can
basic math?
be a chip to those people all you want. Those people are delusional.
And I was like, do you know how to do basic arithmetic? Because, Pennsylvania is out of recount territory, and they don't allow people to request recounts once it's out of, automatic recount territory. Biden has 180,000 vote lead in Michigan. That's 3 percentage points. So that's not happening. In fact, I'm angry that Rashida Tlaib isn't getting the credit she deserves for delivering Michigan to Joe Biden, because it was Rashida Tlaib, whose district is in Detroit. She was
Future of the party.
Absolutely. She was pushing door knocking very late in the campaign. The thing that the Biden campaign couldn't be fucking bothered to do. And you know what? That probably won him the state. But she's not going to get any credit for that. Ilhan Omar also really pushed door knocking, and her district is the largest in terms of population of any district in the state of Minnesota. She most likely got him Minnesota because Clinton won that state by only 1.5 points 4 years ago. He won it by a solid 7 or 8 points this time around. And the reason why Clinton almost lost that state was because turnout in Hennepin County, which is where Omar's district is, cratered into the fucking floor compared to 2012.
Even AOC did Biden a fucking solid by not particularly endorsing him, but basically saying he sucks, but that's what the option is right now.
That was the best argument I heard in favor of Biden. He sucks, but I guess we'll do it anyways, right?
I mean, it was demonstrably effective. Even sort of centrist dipshits had good things to say about the way that she used social media as a platform to drive voter turnout.
And now you're seeing all these corporate Dems going after her. And, she might quit politics, she said. So, gotta love this.
Honestly, I would probably have more respect for her if she did, because...
Yeah, that's the thing. Is it's a move that you kind of have to be I get it. I totally understand it, but it just sucks.
Well,
it makes me very uncomfortable, a lot of the votes that she's taken or just refused to participate in, because she is a vocal member of the DSA. Everybody knows she came from the DSA. So if she is representing us, I would rather she represent us than compromise between the ideology of the organization and fucking mainstream Democrats. So
yeah, absolutely.
I thought we were going to talk about this next week, but to end this
part we'll be deeper. We'll get deeper into it.
I will say, to clarify, she said she was thinking about it, but she says that she feels like she has no choice to stay in politics, because if she does, it will be seen as how the left is just a fluke, and how the party's hostility towards her both made her want to quit, but also she feels the need that she has to stay in Congress to try to aggressively fight the centrists, essentially. And we're also going to talk about this next week, but Rashida Tlaib is starting to go off on centrists. She's not even trying to hide it.
Yeah.
She's my favorite congressperson, hands down.
Yes, she's the best. She's not
there's a Politico headline.
You probably could rank politicians, but
there's a Politico headline from this morning. Tlaib lashes out at centrist Democrats over election debacle. Quote, "I can't be silent anymore."
Anybody who runs on impeach the motherfucker and then goes in there and actually stands up for labor rights.
Also, eventually impeaches the motherfucker. Actually,
Right.
She accomplished what she set out to do.
That's true. That's more than you can say for almost any other Democratic candidate.
And she got her start.
The motherfucker, and then she did it.
And she got her start as being a viral sensation in that video where she was yelling at the Republican congressman.
Very follow through in politics.
Yeah. She started, her first grace onto the social media stratosphere was the clip of her yelling at a fucking Republican asshole, and now she's in our government. So, and same with Cori Bush. You can do it. We can all do it.
Isn't she like a kickboxer too?
Yeah.
Whom? Talib?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's just like badass across the board.
Dream is that she will either she will become president, or she will become president and then like call for us to like burn down our whole society.
Yeah, I would love to see her run for president, but I would also would be terrified of the apparatus that they would spring to stop her. So
yeah, that's also the thing I'm kind of scared of. Like, look at like the amount of like resources and like the machinery that they wielded to stop a social democratic 78-year-old white guy.
And even what they did with AOC this year.
Yeah, and with Ilhan Omar. And, like, I could only imagine the response they would have to someone like her who's, like, unabashedly, like, democratic socialist and, like, doesn't give a fuck.
BDS supporter, all this shit, yeah.
Bernie doesn't even support BDS.
AOC doesn't even explicitly support BDS.
That's what I mean, is, like...
yeah, that's the problem.
I mean, I'm glad, I guess. Like, I'm glad that she won that race, because in that case, it wasn't really a contest between two shitbags. It was like someone whose politics are closer to mine than they are to the challenger. And in this case, the challenger was basically the entire Democratic machine. Like, New York politics are fucking gross.
I don't think AOC gets enough credit because she has to deal with the fact that there was a lot more media scrutiny and a lot more like media fixation on her than even Rashida Tlaib, really. She has to deal with the fact that like Fox is fixated on her. The centrists are constantly like evaluating whether or not they like wanted to try to destroy her origin. In the way that like they don't really fixate on Tlaib as much, or at least over a prolonged period of time. Because like Tlaib will have like a moment here and there where like the right and the centrists freak out, like when she says "Preach the motherfucker," but like she kind of flies under the radar for the most.
Yeah, I honestly think I think right wingers just like I think they're just horny and they don't know how to.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm trying also like figure out the way to say it and not sound weird. That it kind of comes down to how attractive AOC is.
Like they resent her for it, or what's going?
Like
it's
attracted to her, and they can't deal with the fact that she is so vehemently against their politics,
and the fact that like she wields a lot of power. At least when it comes to New York politics, I keep forgetting the name of the guy that she ran against.
Joe Crowley.
Right, Crowley.
Yep.
She defeated Crowley in like an insane upset. There was a lot of establishment money that went into that race, and she
gets things done because also the Amazon deal.
Here's the thing though, like she won her race by 15 points against Crowley, despite the fact that he spent $3 million and she only raised like $300,000 the entire race.
Right, like she represents something that is terrifying to conservatives, which is basically feminism. She represents a progressive and powerful female uprising, which is very antithetical to like conservative values.
And Ben Shapiro wants to fuck her.
Also, the fact that she's incredibly intelligent. I mean, like...
Yeah, Ben Shapiro wants some...
P-word.
He wants some feet pics.
Oh, he definitely does, yes. A lot of it comes from that. A lot of it comes from misplaced horniness. The world is a very weird place.
Well, I mean, if...
He's confused about, like, a smart person, like, that he disagrees with.
Really, if you couple the fear with the horniness, with the confusion and the anger, like it makes sense that they don't know how to fucking deal with her, you know?
Yeah. It's the ultimate object of desire, which is an object of desire that they can never really have and never really understand. But and speaking of like misplaced horniness, like with the like everybody's like the celebration that everybody was going through. It felt a little forced. It was very reminiscent of when Felix said this on Chappa, but I actually I've been feeling this way too. But it was when Osama bin Laden was killed. It feels like the same thing.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when everybody went to the White House and was like hanging off the fence and shit, it feels like the exact same thing. It's just very bizarre, very weird reaction.
I'm glad that you said that first, because I've been feeling that since Saturday, and I've been very uncomfortable by it, but like uncomfortable enough that I'm not really willing to say it out loud unless someone else says it first.
Yeah, but the way I see it is that like the celebration was partially because like everybody just had the political orgasm that they wanted to have with Hillary Clinton's victory, and they're misplacing it into this celebration now. And I think honestly, like on Twitter, Connor Habib put it perfectly that like it's really interesting to see a sense of relief confused as a reason to celebrate. And I completely agree with that. And that is, you know, and I admit that's kind of cope, but I completely see that like I can distance myself from it, and I can like come to terms with it, even though like I have some interesting feelings about the fact that I did see like prominent DSA people out there, and I did see them trying to like hey, like everybody, let's go and party, and it's just very weird. My form of cope is basically that like everybody's going out there, they're having their political orgasm, and then they're gonna have the refractory period of like the next 2 years. They're gonna fuck off. They're gonna get into like, I don't know, like wine drinking and cat videos, and that's fine. Whatever.
That's a sad orgasm if it lasts for like a couple hours and then the refractory period takes several years.
Yeah. That's politics, y'all.
I mean, it's an orgasm over the victory of Joe Biden, so of course it's not very satisfying.
It was a work day for me, so it didn't really feel like celebrating at the time, but also like I had this reaction, and I'm in like a Facebook group with some people I met at the Bernie concert back in February, and one of them sent a message, and I was laughing so hard because it felt like the summation of 2020 in a single sentence. Yay! The racist rapist I wanted won. We barely managed to replace the racist rapist we had with a different racist rapist. Hooray!
Or the cop.
Like that, I feel like that's 2020 in a sentence right there.
Before I forget, I want to give a shout out to my homie Will, and it's not Scott's bro, it's a different Will. While we were talking about the CEO of Uber, unbeknownst to him, he sent me a text that just said wealth shown to scale, and it was like a visual representation of Jeff Bezos's money versus the average person's money.
Oh god.
He was the guy who showed me Zizek.
Is that the video with like the rice, and it's just like horrifying? Because it's like the average person in poverty is like they have one piece of rice, and the average like middle class person has like 3 pieces of rice, and then you get to Jeff Bezos and it's like an entire box.
It's like 5 boxes.
What he sent me was, it's a GitHub link, so somebody wrote a program that would create a visual representation. So like it's as far from metaphor as you can get. It's just the only thing he said was gross.
It's like one of those things when it's like the solar system, and it's like Earth would be, a foot away from the sun or whatever, and then it's like Pluto is like you'd have to keep walking for like
miles.
A very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, like the solar system is, the way that it's represented is like hilariously drawn in from astrological distances are fucking insanely impossible to comprehend.
Yeah.
Like we can see things that are so far away that it took billions upon billions of years for the light emitting from them to get to us.
Yeah.
It took me this long to remember, but like I totally forgot to remember to mention that Florida passed the 15 million age.
Florida.
That's like more cognitive dissonance for you.
Actually, no, the insane thing, it passed on a ballot question. It got 61% of the vote. Biden lost. Biden actually underperformed the minimum wage ballot question by 17 percentage points.
We talk about this on the Patreon episode.
Wait, it was a ballot measure? See, that's just another example of what a wild card that shit is.
Florida, America's penis. Never know what it's going to do.
The Sunshine State.
And with that,
Comrade Scott tells you what to watch.
y'all should watch Radlibs, obviously. That's going to be my recommendation. That was my thing.
Oh, it can't be it, bro. Give us another one.
All right.
Well, where they can find that movie?
Somewhere on the internet, Joe. I don't know. Torrent everything, man. Come on. I've advocated for this before, and I'll continue to do such. Also, watch Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. If you want to watch like a very paranoid movie that's not necessarily about politics, but is very political in spirit, watch that movie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Comrade Scott told you what to watch. watch. Beepity, beepity, beepity.
Oh, fuck. I just dropped the cap to my spitter on the floor.
Well, if we're going to wrap it up here, I just want to say that in addition to what I said about my feelings about everyone celebrating, I was also happy to, people that I care about were feeling, less doomful. And that makes me happy, even if...
Except for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to, be the person who will sit over here in the shadows and be cognizant of how doomful everything is going to continue to be. Go have your brunch today. Take a day and have your political orgasm. Whatever. That's great.
That kind of patience or filter.
Joe is the bright beacon of optimism that we have on this show. So. All right. Yeah. My name's Scott. I'm yelling legitimately. Follow me online if you'd like. I don't care. At Death Mullet on the internet. Go, Joe.
I have that effect on people. I am Joe. You can find me on the internet, probably complaining about the Red Sox or American politics, at JLFB96 on Twitter. And I don't really care about my Instagram enough to tell people where to find it. It's more of a personal account. Ellie, you can go next.
I'm Ellie. You can find me at my dining room table, staring wistfully at my cat as she sits daintily on her perfectly sized piece of bubble wrap that we keep on the floor for this purpose, and marveling at how cute she is. Jesse, go.
I'm Jesse, and it just occurred to me that I had nothing to say about the celebratory emotion and spirit of the nation, because that was just about the time that we realized Squirrel probably has epilepsy. So that was kind of a shitty.
We all send Squirrel our love.
You can't love her more than I do. It's physically impossible.
All Squirrel.
All cats are comrades. Anyway, Jesse, you can find me in music form. SoundCloud.com/ContingenceBoston. Please remember to hit up comrade-rosie.org. Click Getting Involved and select one or more mutual aid groups to donate a little bit of money or a little bit of volunteering hours to, because as much as it seems like we are hurting right now, there are people that are fucking hurting significantly more than we are, and mutual aid goes a long way to remedy some of those basic needs that are being completely ignored by the state right now.
Hell yeah.
Also because it's entirely possible that a Biden administration will be seeking to make cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. Which is why I've been freaking out about the possibility of Democrats effectively losing control of the House, because that's basically what happened under Bill Clinton. They radically restructured Medicaid, and they means-tested it to fucking hell to the point where it's useless. Also, they reduced it from being a federal program that works to a means-tested program that is, delineated to the states. And I genuinely fear an escalation.
It's bad stuff, people. Hate to see it. Like Jesse said, go to comrade-rosie.com, get involved.
No. Say that again.
You're shining a beacon of hope that I am.
What happened? Did I get cut out?
No, you just fucked it up.
What did I do? Just cut out what I said.
Okay, I'm definitely not going to keep this exchange in.
He's a maverick, folks.
We love him.
Hey, if you want to believe in aliens, I'm cool with that. I still love you. I don't care.
Whatever. So the show's got a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/epic incredulity. Go to Twitter, epic incredulity. Jesus. Go to Instagram, same name, epic incredulity. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. I always forget one of them every week. Because so many of them.
We're on TikTok.
You can find your Epoch wherever your podcasts are sold at the podcast store. You should sign up to the Patreon.
Be a patron.
Give us $1.
I started editing, so you're gonna hear some of that, and because of that, we might be able to produce some more Patreon content. Because I'll be, we'll do some things, And I have to say,
good morning. Sunday morning.
That's your Epoch, baby.
And what is Aleppo?
What is Aleppo?
I am not mad. I am laughing. I am not owned. You are owned.